The outsiders once captured the image of rebellious youth and shattered dreams caught between two opposing worlds. But the tragedy did not remain only on the screen. 42 years later, the cast of the film lived through cruel destinies, as if haunted by a curse. Broken marriages, struggles with addiction, sudden deaths. All of it turned them into the true victims of the very story they once acted out. What really happened? Let us uncover the truth. Patrick Swayze as Darryl "Darry" Curtis. At age 31, Patrick Swayze took on the role of Darryl "Darry" Curtis in The Outsiders, 1983. The eldest brother carrying the responsibility of his family in a world filled with loss and harshness. The image of Darry, stern and tough yet hiding an inner pain, made the character one of the most tragic highlights of the film. And through this role, audiences had no idea that Swayze was reflecting the very bitterness of his own life. Patrick Wayne Swayze was born on August 18, 1952, in Houston, Texas. His life could have been far brighter had it not been for the dark shadow of addiction. As his career began to rise, alcohol and cigarettes became temporary remedies for the torment in his soul. He drank himself into exhaustion, smoked until his lungs were destroyed, and turned his body into a battlefield of collapsing coughs. Every moment spent drowning in alcohol was another moment his marriage with Lisa Nemi was pushed to its breaking point. She had loved him since her teenage years, yet she was forced to watch her husband crumble in a cycle of self-destruction that she could not save him from. Fate struck its cruelest blow when Patrick Swayze was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer in 2008. The vicious disease hung over him like a death sentence, turning the strong body of a dancer into a frail figure reduced to skin and bones. He continued to work, still stepping into the spotlight, but behind the scenes were wrenching pains and the short, labored breaths of a man who knew death was closing in. Patrick bitterly admitted that it was alcohol and cigarettes, the very things he could not give up, that helped kill him. On September 14, 2009, Patrick Swayze died in Los Angeles, ending a life of only 57 years. He left behind an estimated $40 million estate, along with an immortal film legacy from Dirty Dancing to Ghost. Patrick Swayze departed in both physical and emotional pain, leaving behind an irreplaceable void in the hearts of those who had loved him, like a Hollywood tragedy that never fades. William Smith as store clerk. William Smith appeared as the store clerk in The Outsiders, 1983, at age 50. Though his screen time was brief, his fierce gaze and chiseled features made him stand out even in a small scene. This was the essence of Smith throughout his career. Ruthless villains, unyielding tough men. But behind the screen, his life held tragedies that no role could ever hide. William Emmett Smith, Jr. was born on March 24, 1933, in Columbia, Missouri. His childhood was tied to the family farm, where grueling labor and harsh living conditions shaped his rugged exterior. Yet, that toughness could not shield him from the pain of broken marriages. He married twice, both ending in bitter failure, leaving behind a distance with his children that was never healed. The man millions of viewers feared and admired on screen was powerless when faced with the collapse of his own family. The emptiness after divorce pushed William Smith into alcoholism. He drank endlessly to escape reality, but each drop of alcohol dragged him closer to ruin. His health declined, his spirit eroded, his career slipped away, and by the 1990s, he officially fell into bankruptcy. Once hailed as the greatest villain on screen, he spent his final years like a shadow, with no fame, no support, surrounded only by loneliness. On July 5, 2021, William Smith passed away in Los Angeles at the age of 88. He died in a nursing home, with no family by his side, only the echoes of a distant past glory. His net worth at death was estimated at around $2 million, mostly from supporting roles in action films. His death closed the chapter on a life marked by bitterness, leaving audiences with not only sympathy, but also haunting sorrow. C. Thomas Howell as Ponyboy Curtis. C. Thomas Howell stepped onto the big screen as Ponyboy Curtis in The Outsiders, 1983, at just 16 years old. His portrayal of the fragile teenager, torn between loss and hope, helped him become one of the brightest young faces of the 1980s generation of actors. Audiences believed Howell would quickly rise to the ranks of Hollywood's top stars, but that glow of fame turned out to be the beginning of a stormy journey. Christopher Thomas Howell was born on December 7, 1966, in Los Angeles, California. After such dazzling success at a young age, he faced the crushing pressure of early fame. Instead of finding stability, Howell turned to drugs as a form of escape. This dangerous habit pushed him into a bitter personal tragedy. His first marriage to actress Rae Dawn Chong collapsed after just 1 year, leaving him in loneliness and disorientation. The breakdown of his marriage was only the first step in a series of even heavier downfalls. In an attempt to regain balance, Howell threw himself into real estate business ventures. But instead of reviving his career, he lost everything. In 2000, he went bankrupt, falling into financial ruin. The image of the once brilliant young star on screen now faded into memory, replaced by that of a man brought down by failure, leaving the public shocked and sorrowful. Today, C. Thomas Howell is 59 years old. After decades of struggling with loss, he continues to work on a few television projects, though the glow of his early fame has long since dimmed. His net worth is estimated at only around $4 million, a small figure compared to the potential once expected of him. His life has closed a harsh circle, from glorious heights to lonely depths, leaving audiences with a deep sense of pity whenever they think of him. Ralph Macchio as Johnny Cade. At 21 years old, Ralph Macchio moved audiences deeply with his role as Johnny Cade in The Outsiders, 1983. The image of the frail boy, living in poverty and constantly fighting against violence, was etched into the hearts of viewers. The success of the film made him one of Hollywood's rising stars and soon led him to The Karate Kid, where his fame exploded worldwide. Yet that very spotlight opened the door to a bitter journey he would pay for throughout the rest of his life. Ralph George Macchio was born on November 4, 1961, in Huntington, Long Island, New York. His childhood began peacefully in the care of his Italian-Greek parents, but that happiness did not last. Illness claimed his parents' lives, leaving him with devastating loss far too early, when he was still a young man. That emotional wound never healed, causing Ralph to carry loneliness within him even under Hollywood's brightest lights. The pain of his youth grew heavier when his career failed to follow the path everyone expected. After the glory of The Karate Kid, Hollywood turned its back on Ralph, branding him with the stigma of being a child star who couldn't grow up. Major opportunities slipped away one by one, pushing him into depression and a crisis of identity. His enduring marriage to Phyllis Fierro, whom he wed in 1987, became the only lifeline anchoring him to reality, but even that love could not erase the feeling of abandonment in the very film world where he had once shined the brightest. Now 64 years old, Ralph Macchio has found a measure of redemption. After decades of obscurity, he regained fame through Cobra Kai, the series that proved he still had value. His net worth is estimated at about $8 million, largely from The Karate Kid and Cobra Kai, though that figure cannot compensate for the long years filled with tears and loneliness. When he was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2024, that moment was not only a belated recognition of his career, but also a form of solace for a life once buried beneath loss, prejudice, and sorrow. Emilio Estevez as Keith Two-Bit Matthews. At 21, Emilio Estevez stepped into Hollywood's spotlight as Keith Two-Bit Matthews in The Outsiders, 1983. The image of the rebellious, witty young man who also carried loneliness made him a defining face of the 1980s Brat Pack generation. Audiences believed he would go further than anyone else in the group, but just as his career path seemed wide open, the shadows of his private life began to take over. Emilio Estevez was born on May 12, 1962, in Staten Island, New York. He grew up in an artistic family as the eldest son of actor Martin Sheen. Instead of protection, however, Emilio had to witness his father's alcoholism and endless arguments, filling his childhood with insecurity. The long conflict with his father left deep scars on his soul, leaving him with feelings of both admiration and resentment, an emotional struggle that stayed with him even as he rose to the silver screen. Those wounds quickly drove Emilio into other mistakes. In the 1980s, at the height of his fame, he fell into drugs and allowed himself to spiral downward. Addiction not only eroded his health, but also destroyed his marriage to singer Paula Abdul. Once admired as a Hollywood golden couple, the union ended in divorce in 1994, leaving him once again alone. The pain was worsened by his helplessness in watching his younger brother, Charlie Sheen, collapse under addiction, turning the Sheen-Estevez family into a tragedy stretching across generations. Today, Emilio Estevez is 63 years old. He no longer holds the radiant glory of his youth, instead finding purpose as a director, quietly standing behind the camera instead of in front of it. His net worth is estimated at about $18 million, largely from The Breakfast Club and the films he wrote and directed himself. Matt Dillon as Dallas Dally Winston. Matt Dillon made a powerful impression as Dallas Dally Winston in The Outsiders, 1983, when he was 19 years old. The rebellious, reckless, and brooding character reflected part of Dillon's own life, making audiences both admire him and shudder. The success of the film turned him into one of Hollywood's brightest teen idols, but it was also the beginning of a dark journey he would never fully escape. Matt Dillon was born on February 18, 1964, in Meyrink, New York. Although he grew up in a large Catholic family where bonds were strong, he carried within him the desire to break free from ordinary life and chase stardom. As an adult, he fell into a series of short and heavy relationships, including his highly publicized romance with Cameron Diaz from 1995 to 1998. The breakup not only cost him a great love, but also pushed him into a long stretch of loneliness that persists to this day, as he has never married. The emptiness of his personal life soon led Dillon into darker paths. In the 1990s, he sank into drug use, allowing addiction to damage both his body and his spirit. A career once praised as brilliant suddenly stalled, while he himself fell into depression. An actor Roger Ebert once called the best of his generation was buried by addiction and inner turmoil, with each later role carrying the painful shadow of a man brought low. Now 61 years old, Matt Dillon continues to appear on screen and still maintains a place in the film world. But the light of stardom has dimmed. His net worth is estimated at about $40 million, mainly from Crash and There's Something About Mary. Rob Lowe as Soda Pop Curtis. At 19, Rob Lowe shot to stardom in The Outsiders, 1983, as Soda Pop Curtis, the gentle young man who hid deep emotional scars. That role turned him into a teen icon of the 1980s, worshipped by millions as the perfect heartthrob. Yet just as the spotlight shone brightest, Lowe's life took a darker path, where fame could not conceal the wounds within. Rob Lowe was born on March 17, 1964, in Charlottesville, Virginia. As a child, he lost complete hearing in his right ear due to complications from mumps. That tragedy made him feel different, carrying a sense of inadequacy from an early age. When his parents divorced, the pain grew even deeper. The absence of protection and affection left a hollow space, leading him into adulthood with an overwhelming hunger for recognition and love, but also a dangerous susceptibility to temptation. Those emotional scars soon turned into bitter mistakes. In 1988, Lowe became the center of a sex tape scandal involving an underage girl, a controversy that destroyed his reputation overnight. At the same time, he sank into alcohol and drugs, letting himself spiral in endless nights of partying. His private life unraveled further when his marriage to Cheryl Burkhoff collapsed, forcing them to separate before later reconciling in fragile hope. In 1990, Lowe entered rehab, a desperate attempt to wrest back his life from the shadows he had created. By 2025, Rob Lowe is 61 years old. After decades of struggle and renewal, he has regained a place in audiences' hearts through classics like The West Wing and Parks and Recreation. His net worth is estimated at about $100 million, but neither money nor fame can erase the memories of the addiction and scandal that once nearly buried it all. Diane Lane as Cherry Valance. At 18, Diane Lane stepped into the role of Cherry Valance in The Outsiders, 1983. Her delicate beauty and sorrowful gaze convinced audiences that this young actress was destined for a brilliant Hollywood future. Yet, much like her character, Diane soon faced tragedies that no spotlight could hide. Diane Lane was born on January 22, 1965, in New York, into an artistic family. Her father was an acting coach, and her mother a nightclub singer. Her childhood was torn apart by her parents' divorce, leaving an emptiness that could never be filled. That fracture forced Diane to grow up quickly, constantly searching for love and comfort in the men around her. But what she found instead were more wounds. In 1988, she married actor Christopher Lambert and gave birth to a daughter, but the marriage ended in 1994. In 2004, Diane once again placed her trust in happiness by marrying Josh Brolin. But less than a decade later, she had to walk away from a violent household, divorcing in 2013. After 2 failed marriages, Diane turned to alcohol to dull her pain and eventually sank into depression, a silent battle far more cruel than any role she had ever played on screen. Today, Diane Lane is 60 years old. Her net worth is estimated at around $45 million, thanks to the success of Unfaithful and Under the Tuscan Sun. But money cannot mend the heartbreak she has endured. Tom Cruise as Steve Randall. At 21, Tom Cruise appeared in The Outsiders, 1983, as Steve Randall, a role that seemed small at first, but ended up completely changing the course of his destiny. Audiences saw in that young man a proud gaze, a captivating smile, and a force that made Hollywood take notice instantly. Yet behind that dazzling beginning, Tom's life carried deep wounds that foreshadowed a journey both glorious and tragic. Tom Cruise was born on July 3, 1962, in Syracuse, New York, into a turbulent family. His hot-tempered, harsh father left him with memories of fear and hurt. Tom's childhood was one of constant wandering. He transferred schools 15 times before the age of 14. Struggling with dyslexia, he was often mocked by classmates, forcing the small boy to swallow his tears and vow that one day he would escape the shadows of ridicule. Even at the height of his career, Tom Cruise could not escape tragedies in his private life. His 3 marriages, to Mimi Rogers, Nicole Kidman, and Katie Holmes, all ended in heartbreak, leaving behind gaps nothing could fill. The most painful was his marriage to Katie Holmes, which ended bitterly in 2012. Tom's unwavering devotion to Scientology became a chasm that tore the marriage apart and distanced him from his own daughter, Suri. The pain of family loss deepened, turning the image of a radiant superstar before the public into a stark contrast with the overwhelming loneliness behind closed doors. By 2025, Tom Cruise is 63 years old. His net worth is estimated at about $600 million, built on blockbusters like Top Gun and The Mission. Impossible series. Yet even such fortune cannot mend the emotional scars he carries. Fame has made him one of the greatest legends of cinema, but the truth behind the image leaves audiences with a lump in their throats. Glenn Withrow as Tim Shepard. Glenn Withrow appeared in The Outsiders, 1983, as Tim Shepard, a tough character marked by arrogance and the darkness of a violent youth, when he was just 29 years old. It was a role that etched him into audiences' memories as part of the raw, untamed world Francis Ford Coppola brought to life. Yet beyond the blinding lights of the film set, Glenn's real life slowly spiraled into a cruel downfall few could have foreseen. Glenn Withrow was born on November 24, 1953, in Highland Heights, Kentucky. Growing up as a small-town boy, he carried the dream of escaping his modest roots and finding Hollywood. But once he touched that dream, Glenn could not hold on to his balance. The pressures and temptations of acting soon drove him to alcohol, which quickly turned into addiction and began dismantling everything he had built. The promising career he once held after The Outsiders stalled almost immediately. Alcohol-fueled arguments wrecked his marriage and left him with a loneliness that cut deeper with time. Depression set in, and he even turned down the few opportunities that still came his way. A man who once stood under the stage lights now found himself struggling in the shadows of his own despair as both faith and work abandoned him. By 2025, Glenn Withrow is 72 years old. His net worth has dwindled to about $1 million, mostly from minor roles like Raising Arizona. He lives quietly, nearly forgotten by the very industry that once embraced him. Glenn's story is not just a memory of wasted talent, but also a cautionary tale about the brutal price weakness and loneliness can exact on a person. Leif Garrett, as Bob Sheldon. At 21, Leif Garrett appeared in The Outsiders, 1983, as Bob Sheldon, the wealthy, arrogant, and cruel bully. The role reflected a bitter truth from his real life, as the shine of his teen idol fame was already starting to crack. Behind the bright face, once plastered across teen magazine covers, was a lost young man, consumed by addictions that would soon drag his life into darkness. Leif Garrett was born on November 8, 1961, in Hollywood, California, into a broken family after his father abandoned them early. His childhood loneliness was quickly masked by premature fame. By his teenage years, he was already heavily addicted to drugs, treating cocaine and heroin as his escape from the pressures of stardom. This habit destroyed the foundation of his pop idol career right in its brightest stage. The years that followed were marred by scandal. Garrett was arrested multiple times for drug possession, ordered by courts into rehab, but he relapsed again and again. His romance with Nicolette Sheridan, once seen as his anchor, collapsed in the wake of his controversies, leaving behind a man isolated, depressed, and publicly disgraced. The breaking point came in 2010 when he was arrested for heroin. By then, the image of America's teen star had vanished completely, replaced by that of a fallen figure chained to drugs and jail. By 2025, Leif Garrett is 64 years old. His net worth is estimated at only about $100,000, nearly wiped out after repeated bankruptcies and with no chance of reviving his career. His story is not just the tragedy of a fallen idol, but a brutal testament to the price of youth lost in addiction and the false glow of fame. Tom Waits, as Buck Merrill. At 33, Tom Waits appeared in The Outsiders, 1983, as Buck Merrill, a small role but a striking one, reflecting some of the grit and gravel of his real-life persona. On screen, he brought not just the image of a drifter, but also the raspy voice that had already made so many of his songs haunting. Though brief, the role stood as proof of how Tom always poured pieces of his own life into his art. Tom Waits was born on December 7, 1949, in Pomona, California, into a working-class family. His father, a teacher struggling with alcoholism, made Tom's childhood unstable and fractured by separation. That pain imprinted on his soul, turning him into a wanderer through bars and back streets, collecting fragments of conversations from society's fringes, words he later transformed into haunting lyrics. His private life was no calmer. Alcohol and cigarettes quickly became companions, leaving long scars on both his health and spirit. Though love and family sometimes gave him brief refuge, addiction and a failed first marriage pulled him into cycles of solitude. His raspy voice was fueled by smoke and drink, while his heart carried wounds that never closed. Yet those shadows became the raw material that allowed him to create music so eerie and magnetic that listeners were left shaken but enthralled. By 2025, Tom Waits is 76 years old. He lives quietly, almost withdrawn from the spotlight, with an estimated net worth of $25 million, earned largely from his decades-spanning music career. Though his health has been worn down by alcohol and tobacco, his legacy remains as proof of an artist who dared to turn pain into art. His story evokes both sorrow and admiration, for not everyone can sing from the deepest wounds of their own life. Darren Dalton as Randy Anderson. At 18, Darren Dalton was chosen by Francis Ford Coppola to play Randy Anderson in The Outsiders, 1983. His portrayal of a sock with a polished appearance but inner torment marked a promising start to his film career. At the time, everyone believed Darren would rise alongside the new generation of young actors shaking up Hollywood. Darren Dalton was born on February 9, 1965, in Howell, Wyoming. His youth was soon tinged with tragedy when alcohol appeared first as an escape, but quickly became a chain. This habit shattered his marriage, leaving behind fractures that could never be repaired. From the bright lights of red carpets, he slowly fell into the darkness of solitude, carrying with him the deep sorrow of repeated personal failures. His career followed the same fate. After The Outsiders and Red Dawn, Darren struggled to secure a place in Hollywood's ruthless industry. Alcohol and personal mistakes cost him precious opportunities. While his peers rose to stardom, he was forced to leave the screen and turn to writing as a way to preserve his artistic voice. By 2025, Darren Dalton is 60 years old. His net worth is estimated at only about $500,000, largely from writing books and screenplays. The image of the once promising young actor has long since faded, replaced by that of a man marked by both past glory and the deep scars of life. Michelle Meyrink as Marcia. Michelle Meyrink was cast by Francis Ford Coppola as Marcia in The Outsiders, 1983, at 20 years old. Though her character was only Cherry Valance's friend, the role helped Michelle stand out as a fresh and unique face in 1980s Hollywood. Audiences believed the young woman with her unusual charm would go far, but behind the glow was a darkness that slowly took over her life. Michelle Meyrink was born on September 1, 1962, in Vancouver, Canada. In her early 20s, she was already battling worsening depression. The dazzling world of film only deepened her inner fractures. Exhaustion and instability eventually forced her to leave acting in 1990 at the very peak of her career's promise. That decision not only closed the door on her artistic dream, but also opened the way to years of confusion and isolation. Her personal life brought more wounds. A broken marriage left Michelle with an irreparable sense of loss. From an actress once celebrated, she became an ordinary woman struggling with psychological pain, loneliness, and silences no one else could truly understand. With time, she turned to meditation and teaching acting as ways to heal, but the old wounds never truly disappeared. By 2025, Michelle Meyrink is 63 years old. Her net worth is estimated at about $1 million, mostly from coaching work in Vancouver. She no longer stands before the camera, no longer remembered as a symbol, but lives quietly on the margins of her once bright memories. Her story is heartbreaking, because behind those youthful roles filled with light lies a life shadowed by depression, brokenness, and sorrow too heavy to name. 42 years have passed, yet the ghosts of The Outsiders still seem unwilling to release its cast. Was it nothing more than cruel coincidence, or does the film truly carry a curse? Tell us what you think. And don't forget to follow us to uncover more chilling secrets hidden behind Hollywood's glittering facade.